The following recording, God willing, is a rough draft of a novel of a journey that I took into the Himalayan mountains in 2020. The working title is Into the Unknown for Peace, a trek for peace, something like that. I took Take a Hike to the extreme. 3,000 kilometers extreme, and not just any hike. I had no idea where I was going. Completely into the unknown. Not many people do or even understand what that means. And from what I found, as it's been not many people that aren't trekkers or hikers or mountain climbers are even interested in these stories, even though they're so rich. And it's not just a story about climbing up and down hills and mountains. There's tigers, bears, gurus, babas, Shiva. There's amazing food. There's amazing vistas, experiences. I need to reflect. But this story is different than most of these trekking stories for many, many reasons. To begin with, I filmed the entire trek, and the person who trekked with me, my friend at the time, has held all the footage hostage now of this over 3-month-long journey, and his only explanation for holding this footage hostage for 4 years is that I don't understand the gravity of the situation. I was going completely into the unknown on this journey. I wanted nothing. I wanted nothing from the past, and I was aiming to achieve nothing from the future. I just wanted to be. I wanted to be present. I wanted to see what it was like to experience the world at 3 miles per hour on my feet. And compared to the world of bikes and cars and skates and wheels that I grew up with, it is truly a totally different world. It's very slow. Walking 3,000 kilometers took around 4 to 5 months. Around 4 months. I truly don't understand what he means by I don't understand the gravity of the situation, because in my mind, what I equate that to mean and what I hear from it is I'm a gutsy person who was willing to give up my own comforts and the known and trek into a vast unknown, one of the largest unknowns on the planet, without knowing anything about it. In hindsight, I know now what I didn't know then, which probably kept me safe in my ignorance, that there's everything from tigers and bears to strange lizard creatures in the uppermost parts of the Himalayas, according to some avid trekkers, and snow leopards, and the list goes on. But I gave up all those comforts to trek into this unknown with no destination other than Himalayas. I began in Jaipur, India, the pink city of love, and I ended my journey in Manali, India, in December for Christmas, where there, at the Himalayan Oak Hotel, I spoke directly to God. And isn't that the goal? Isn't that what we climb mountains for? Isn't that why we walk? Because we want to connect with that. We want to talk to God, right? It was in December of 2020, at the end of the trek, while staying at the Himalayan Oak Hotel, when God spoke to me, showing me that something called Corona was coming, and that people would be in their houses, and that it was about love. XOXOXO. I first visited India in 2013, and we need to backtrack a little bit here because the origins are very important of my beginning my trip in India. I first visited India in 2013 to teach a video production workshop to college students. I arrived in Vadodara, Gujarat in April of 2013, and it was too hot, too loud, too dirty, not enough fancy organic food places and fashions and styles and exciting things. I missed Los Angeles, and after a month, I wanted to leave, but something kept calling me back for years. If I'd only known. There was some kind of past life karma, perhaps, and that is an entire other novel in itself, something involving a city of human unity named Oroville. Here's a hint what that novel might be. Like, my first day in Oroville, I was walking behind a bunch of school children, just exploring the place. They all started giggling and laughing and calling me the mother, who's the owner, who's the woman who created the place. And that's just the beginning of that story. So moving on to this story, I couldn't quite figure out what was keeping me attached to India. And 8 years later, after teaching one more workshop on fashion film to college students at the esteemed Maharaja Sayaji Rao University in Vadodara, Gujarat, India, I was done. Grateful, honored, but done. I was tired of the cities. I had multiple love interests that didn't really pan out how they were supposed to. I had learned to cook lots of great food. I had made a huge group of friends, mainly artists and musicians, and we had a really cool scene. We would stay up all night long and eat food and play music and make art, and the day was pretty much the same thing, just with the sun out. I had met Indian celebrities like Imam Sadiq and many others. I had had clean chai, dirty chai, homemade chai, chai and pani, chai, cold coffee, street food, auntie's food. I rubbed shoulders with villagers and learned their simple ways of life. I started caring about my carbon footprint. I even learned about the middle class ways of life. I'd learned from a Brahmin man that I was supposed to marry, that not just guest is God, but that mother is God, and all the gods they worship are God, and the land India herself is a mother goddess. Basically, in life, there are many shades of gray, and they're all relevant. But 8 years down the line, I found myself in India again. I was unsuccessful in establishing a life in the USA and also unhappy there, and I was called back to Jaipur, India. This must have been my 5th trip, and it would be my final one for a long time. I was laying in bed at a guest house in Jaipur, India. The room was small and stuffy. The walls were faded and pink. Like the typical Indian walls. And I swear I truly wonder how long it takes for those walls to fade. Because even in nice places, I've seen just paint chipping off. It's a rough environment over there. And the air conditioner was old and rattling. There was a armoire for my clothes. Really simple, really basic. There was ample traffic noise outside. And though I had only been in India maybe a week, I was starting to feel the literal smoky dark cloud of pollution weighing me down. But very quickly, instead of sinking into that feeling like every other typical tourist or Indian who lives with the noise and pollution on a daily basis. I was having a realization that was growing. Within a matter of moments, my thought process went from, I'm feeling heavy and sad, I can't believe I'm here again, oh my, woe is me, to, I'm getting out of here and I'm gonna do it my way. I was done with the Atiti Devil Baba trip finally, and I knew I would be eventually. The guest is God trip, and I wanted nothing from anyone anymore. As wonderful as it had been, I was craving freedom, and I wanted to walk until I found it. I wanted to go into the unknown. With this realization, the weight instantly lifted. I knew, finally, that after 8 years of being sucked into the wonderfully gracious but slightly overbearing Indian culture, I was going to learn what it truly means in a country of 2 billion something people to find my space, to carve out my space, to stand on my own 2 feet and have God show me what true freedom and independence means. The forests and mountains are magical. There are parts that remain untouched for thousands of years because the mountains are so vast, and either people don't bother to build and settle there, or they simply can't because of the landscape. And as a lay person who's practiced a lot of meditation, I can say, in a logical sense, I do sort of believe in fairies after being in North Carolina, especially. But walking the Himalayas, I felt that I acknowledged every single blade of grass along the way. I realized that when we aren't rushing through the world, time traveling in land or sky or sea vehicles, we actually are capable of taking in every single little detail of this world around us. Truly, this is not an exaggeration. Most of the time along the journey, there was a decent sleeping accommodation. And by decent, I mean there was a blanket. It might have been dirty, tattered, and oldish, but it worked. There was bathing, there was rivers and streams. Pretty much all the water where I trekked in the Himalayas that was trickling down from the mountain was totally drinkable. I would just hold up my water bottle and pour some water dripping from the mountain into my bottle, and I was set. I didn't spend any money, barely any money. I definitely didn't buy water when I was in the mountains. What's interesting is it's hard to remember the details of the accommodation because the journey into the unknown was so motivating that each morning, no matter what pains I was feeling in my ankles or anywhere else, and no matter where I slept, whether it was on the doorstep of a temple, on the outskirts of a proper jungle reserve on a bench, near tigers and bears, or in the comfortable temple accommodation, I was fired up for the journey. So fired up, in fact, that at one point I reached a monastery and it was starting to get cold. We were getting really up there into the mountains. And it was actually snowing. And I was still comfortably wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And I was not worried of getting cold. And I didn't get cold. Regardless, though, I stopped at this monastery for some food and to see if they had any accommodation. What is surprising is how I could be thousands of miles from all people I love in the USA and things and family and friends and comforts and everything known. And I'm out there in the Himalayas not knowing where I am headed exactly or even where I am, just going. But to be absolutely okay with that, in full faith, knowing the journey would go well, and it did. I was so outside of myself and so large and outside of my ego that people along the journey that I met for the most part stopped talking to me and asking me the FAQs that I used to get back in the Indian cities. I think anyone who came upon me in their car was just kind of in awe, probably thinking, what is this girl doing way out here in the mostly desert mountains of Gyu with only a few snacks and provisions? A place so far out they themselves, being born there on a daily basis, wouldn't have dared to walk. But there I was, just experiencing my life. Sometimes along the journey, hitchhiking was essential, kind of life or death essential. There were many deserted places, especially in the mountains of Gyu, and I had to hitchhike out of there, and unfortunately, they could only drive me so far into more deserted areas before they had to drop me off, and I had to pray another car would come. And sometimes a car would come and they had no idea what they were looking at, or maybe didn't have time, and they wouldn't stop. But again, oddly, I was never worried. There was a larger force with me, the force of God itself, pushing me along, and yes, gravity. An object in motion remains in motion, and I was building a lot of momentum. I remember approaching Key Monastery. I had hitchhiked quite a bit and it was snowing, and I think I had a poncho or a shawl or something that I did take out at this point because it was getting cold. And I was thinking two things. Number one, I was grateful that it was there. Number two, do I really have to climb that road? There was a long, winding road up to the monastery, and it was quite a hike. But it was easily one of the most beautiful monasteries that I've ever seen in my life, and I felt in that moment how many people get to see this monastery this way. I walked and hitchhiked a lot, well, not that much, but mainly walked, sometimes 50 miles a day. I think once even 100, maybe more. But I was thinking to myself, how amazing is this? Everyone else is driving up here, and I get to walk. I get to really take in this beautiful monastery in this very amazing, once in a lifetime experience kind of way. How many people get to do that? I might be one of the only ones who walked there like that.